House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in '08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The state house make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon, they had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back, grocery store food better, custody of your kids back, homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the US, we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. So they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you. Making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
So a question, when is it necessary to vote?
Always.
2 years. The 2-year election, not the 4-year.
All the time. Oh, no, all the time. So I'll give you by way of example. I'm in Anne Arundel County, okay? So of course, the presidential election year, everybody's all hyped for the presidential election year. That's every 4 years. But then in between the presidential election years, and understand, just take this term out of you, but there's no such thing as a midterm election. There's no such thing as an off-year election. If the polls are open, get your rusty-dusty down to the polls and vote, okay? So in Anne Arundel County, next year, 2025, they're electing the mayor and the city council. That's not a presidential year, it's not even the state year. The state election year is 2026. Governor, attorney general, state legislature, comptroller, all of them. Anytime the polls open, not just the presidential year. What he said about Obama, 2008 President Obama had 69 million votes. At that point in time, the most in US history. And had a majority of 60 in the Senate, so he could handle business. Ted Kennedy died from brain cancer, then he got replaced by a Republican, then they had 59 and this whole filibuster nonsense that we may or may not get to. And then in 2010, as opposed to the 61% that showed up in 2008 to put him in, 2010, 41% showed up to vote. 41%. So that means a whole lot of us stayed home. People who had our interests stayed home. And a lot of folks that ain't feeling our interests showed up to vote. And the Congress changed, and then everything else became a fight to get anything done for the rest of his term. And like I said, you can't blame the executive for the inaction of the legislature. People want to be mad at Vice President Harris. Well, what happened to the George Floyd bill? It's a bill. It's got to come out of the House and the Senate. They pass it, conference to wordsmith it, and then it becomes law. The Vice President only votes to break ties in the Senate. That's it. That had to come out of the legislature. It didn't come out of the legislature because they didn't want it to pass. The same way they didn't want the John Lewis Voting Rights Act out. So that's not the fault of The vice president, who by the way is number 2, okay? How much authority does the backup quarterback on the team have? Huh? Unless the quarterback goes down, we don't even call his name. Same thing with the vice president. Unless something happens to the president, we don't call the vice president's name. So all of this business about stuff she didn't do were things she could not do because she was just the vice president. One heartbeat away, but just the vice president. What I wanted to do was ask if you guys could, maybe each of you share one reason that you have heard why either folks don't want to vote, or if we really want to go in, why brothers, some brothers, because understand there's still around 80% of brothers that are like, oh yeah, I'm voting for my sister, I'm voting for Vice President Harris. But that means that there might be up to 20% that aren't, and that's a problem. Because usually we have at least 90% of both our men and our women voting to support the candidates who support our issues. One reason that you have heard why folks say they're not going to vote or that they're not going to vote for the vice president.
Popular vote doesn't elect the president. Popular vote doesn't elect the president.
Popular vote does not elect the
Everybody
president.
submit a popular vote, and you're not electing the president because it goes to the House and the Senate.
Oh, okay, so when you vote, what does your vote determine?
It's not a swing state in Maryland. If you're in a swing state, you may go some way.
The votes determine the electors for the Electoral College.
But the Electoral College doesn't have to rule in favor of the popular vote.
The Electoral College is bound by law. You know, unless they're trying to run it. No, I'm saying unless they're trying to run a game, which of course, whenever Trump's around, you know there's a game going on. 3-card Monte is happening somewhere. But historically, if you are an elector coming from Maryland, if Donald Trump wins Maryland, the 10 electors coming from Maryland are Republican electors, and they're supposed to put forward his name. Same with Vice President Harris. If she wins, the 10 electors coming from Maryland will be Democratic electors to put forward her name. But it's still, the popular vote has something to say about it. But, yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, so tell me, how many votes does it take for the Electoral College?
270.
270. So when we look at the Constitution, that old document, not the first document, the ratification of 1783, if I'm not mistaken, we have to understand that the Constitution was written as an economic piece of document, because guess who wrote and was in the room?
Slave owners.
Let's be more specific.
Still 3/5 of a person, and they only 60%.
Hold on, let's be specific. Who was in the room?
White men.
White, rich,
Landowners.
able-bodied men.
Landowners. Right.
And I say those things, and I want to make sure we restrict it because we can use big words. But at the end of the day, when we go out in communities, we need to make sure that we're talking about what it means to be informed and what are you doing to utilize what you know. Because you don't always have to be book smart. You don't always have to be street smart, but what are you doing to put those things together, recognizing what people power looks like? If we recognize that the Constitution is an economic document, what would be given when we talk about systems like white supremacy, where it rips from everyone, including not just race, but gender, disability, and how much money you have? Because again, money doesn't determine what wealth you have. Wealth is what you own, right? And I don't know how much wealth you all own, right? If we don't vote, guess what? That's still a vote. And in order to dismantle the Electoral College, we gotta make sure that people have access to the ballot, which again reflects and revolves around the systems of white supremacy. And so we're going to refer to the Electoral College. What are you doing not for the moment, but for the movement? Because again, a lot of people talk about dismantling the Electoral College, but they don't even know what steps to take because again, they don't want us unified. Now, to answer your question in particular, one of the big things I noticed, especially amongst youth, is our foreign affairs. Raise your hand if we have elementary school students in here. Elementary school? K-5? No. Yeah, that is. That is. Do y'all play Among Us? The game Among Us? No? Y'all don't play Roblox? Fortnite? What y'all got? Fortnite? Alright. What you trying to do when you playing Fortnite? What you trying to do? You trying to win, right? Yeah. Get a winner chicken dinner, right? That's not play punch. What about my middle school students? Any middle school? No. High school? Alright. Of course. College? Trade school? Veterans? People that are just in it for the fight? 24, that works too, right? And so when we talk about foreign policy, we talk about rule of law, meaning nobody is above the law, whether you're whether you're a former president or whether you're everyday people like you and me, right? That applies not just to people, but to systems. And it applies to what we owe, especially as taxpayers, and what we do as a nation. Because remember, we're sending our representatives to represent us and handle our business. Kind of like Julie's from Everybody's Chris, right? You want to know where your money is going. And when we see state-sanctioned violence, especially not just in Europe, but in the Middle East, you may have been asking yourself, well, why are we sending billions of dollars to other places around the world, but we're struggling here? You got to understand the systems that are in place, because again, if we know Congress has the pot of money, and we know that in 2010 we didn't have the voter turnout because we thought we were in the moment, but we were for the movement, especially to get, let's say, access for healthcare, ensuring that we are reinforcing rule of law through the State Department of, the Department of State, that is, so that that way we're not giving our money to aid the nations that are not doing what they're supposed to do and are causing bloodshed, especially in the Holy Lands, right? That ties into your ability to not just vote, but to follow with your representatives, whether they win or lose. And what I often tell people, particularly younger people that say, well, I'm just not going to vote, I would tell them, well, are you coming to our communities and talking to people who don't have access to, let's say, accessible water fountains at their schools? Or, most importantly, making sure that we're having the seats so when the census comes around, right, something we do when we count how many people live in an area, and we need more congressional representatives, and that means holding the people that are in office for such a long time that don't share our interests, making sure they're kicked out, but making sure we're getting the other people in, right? How these things all tie together? What are you doing to reaffirm what you believe and what this nation can be? Not what you read on the internet, what you believe. That was a long time.
All right, you got the mic here, and then we'll keep it moving. Go ahead.
Well, the question was, why would someone say they don't vote? And I think Yellow Pain said it best in his song, My Vote Don't Count, is because they think my one little vote won't impact. And so from what we've been educated is that the power is in the vote. Once you vote, someone that decides to be an elected official, that means they work for you. Because you are a tax-paying person, a citizen here, and you vote. We sometimes look at it wrong. And so we got to be more aggressive on holding our elected officials accountable as opposed to thinking the way that I see some of us think that my vote don't count.
I just want to share something that I posted within the last week. People often say with pride, I'm not interested in politics. They might as well say, I'm not interested in my standard of living, my health, my job, my rights, freedoms, my future, or any future we mean to keep, any control over our world and lives. We must be interested in politics, because it's about your life. If you're not interested, somebody else will have interest for you, but it ain't gonna be about you.
So just want to clarify, so were we asking in general, or particularly about black men and Kamala Harris, if I could speak on that?
Whatever you think is the
Okay,
more pertinent thing, right?
Absolutely, no. And I don't know, have any of y'all saw this NBC article about misinformation, blacks and misinformation, but they did a article, I don't know if it was the Real, but it was probably NBC, but it was just speaking about top influencers online that promotes misinformation to the black community. But I would just encourage everyone to see that. But one particular part of this conversation, and I was just at an event last night with Ken Allman, who is the Maryland Democratic Party chair. He didn't speak about this, but I just, he spoke about a lot of things, but one of the disinformation pieces, and D.L. Hughley, if you all watched the DNC, he alluded to this, but there's this idea that Kamala Harris arrested a lot of the term is locked up a lot of black people. Now, some of us that actually read into that, that we just have to be open and understand what a prosecutor's job is. Like, there are some not so good people in our community, if I may say so, and drug dealers and sex trafficking, and, you know, et cetera, that they are bringing our people, our community down, like just dishonest. And we have to be able to look at, for instance, what our prosecutors do and respect what they do, and not just always just say, you locking up black people, just a, you know, blanket statement. So I think that some young people are hearing this. I heard Roland Martin allude to generational issues where younger people may not totally get the details of everything, but they listen to people's sound bites. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Hold on a second. Hold on. So hold on.
Why is it important for young people like me to learn about voting even if I can't vote yet?
I'll take that because I was going to come around to that anyway. It's important because just as the young man down there was explaining the electoral college, the 270 votes, and I forgot which election it was, but the person who won the popular vote but lost the electoral vote. Yes. Yeah. So you need to understand the importance of voting, so you'll know what you're voting for and why you're voting. Because, like I said before, like the video said, your vote counts at the local level. That's how you take care of water, school, playgrounds, things of that nature. That's all at your local level. Then you have your state level, where we're talking about the roads and buildings and things of that nature. You're voting for those people to put those things into place for you. And not just for you, but those who are coming behind you. Because you're not the only one that's going to play on that playground. 10 years from now, your cousins or somebody else is going to be playing on that same playground because you helped to vote to get that in. And at the national level, as they said, you're looking out for that person who's going to protect our country. And if you start now understanding how all those pieces come together and how they all work together, you will become what they call an informed voter. So that when you go into the voting booth, you're not going to hear all the noise and all the negativism that people are talking about. You're going to be able to look at what's being asked. You're going to be able to understand what's being asked, and you're going to be able to vote not just your conscience, but what's best for you, your community, and those who are coming behind you. Because everything we do is not just for us. It's for us in the short term, but in the long term, I'm voting for you, my nieces and nephews, my great-great nieces and nephews. I'm voting to make sure that they have something to look forward to when they get to be your age and my age, and they go to vote to make sure that their lifestyles are better than what mine is.
So,
I'll get you.
yeah, so back to the question that was first presented. I think you hit it kind of right on the head, brother, in the back. I think it's the one thing that I've been hearing is that when you're in a state like Maryland that always is blue, right? The concept of my vote counting or really mattering in the grand scheme of things when you always see a state going one way is the reason why most people would just tend to stay home, because they think that whether I vote or not, it's going to be a blue state or not, right? And so that's just the one thing that I've constantly heard about my vote just not mattering just because of the state demographics. Okay, can you let the talk?
Much like you said,
Jump over the top.
I was going to say the lack of information about voting. I think that everyone should register to vote and should vote, because their vote really does matter, especially with these upcoming elections. That each and every vote has the possibility to change the election and has the power to create a change.
And let me say this, while with the presidency, you're voting for electors. The Electoral College determines who the president is. Short history lesson. Basically, the reason we have an Electoral College written into the Constitution in the 1780s, early 1790s, is because of slavery. So anything that has as its root or foundation slavery, you know it's toxic from the the get-go.